Well, we're talking about the Declaration on Religious Freedom. Last Wednesday when we were together, we had some opening remarks and also indicating not only about religious freedom, but also about the role that Americans played in the Second Vatican Council on this particular document. In a very significant way, the Americans spoke more on this document than any other document that was part of the story. Why? Because it was something that had its real beginning in America. It's something that we had experienced living, and also, as I mentioned last week, the person of John Courtney Murray, the Jesuit priest, who really was the intellectual person who delved into it, and how does it resonate with the dignity of the human person and their being open then to having religious freedom, because it's religious freedom that makes it possible for a person in their desire to embrace the truth vis-a-vis their relationship with the Almighty, with God, with whatever a person in their religion relates. It is their human dignity that is being reinforced, that they have the freedom to search for the truth in their lives. So that kind of in summary, I hope, sort of brings together what we were trying to say last week. Today, as we continue, and I want to continue by highlighting this notion of truth. Everyone was created in God's image. Everyone, in a responsible way, is to seek the truth about himself or herself, and to be able then to follow what is fundamentally important in their lives. Religious freedom gives the person that opportunity. And so when that opportunity is compromised or hindered or is not even available, a person then has been severely violated in that they cannot have the opportunity to search for and embrace the most important relationship that anyone has, and that is with his or her God. And so the church really underscores that it is based on not only on the issue of human dignity, but it's also the search for truth. And the church says that it must be preserved. In the course of the world, we know that not only did that come to acceptance until the 18th century and then thereafter, but even today it's not accepted across the world in many countries. And so the church says that it is inappropriate for any government, they begin with government, any government to structure life in a way that circumscribes a person's ability to follow their faith. Certainly in the United States, before the Revolutionary War, before the Constitution, there were states in the colonies that made it very difficult for people of certain religions to live there. That was part of our history. And the Revolutionary War, followed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and the amendments to the Constitution, they changed that landscape, probably as revolutionary a thing than anything else. that was achieved during the Revolutionary War. The church also says that as human beings, we all not only are individuals, but we are social beings. We were created to be with others. Now, some people may be introverted or all of that, but still, notwithstanding, there is a social dimension, a communitarian dimension. The church says that in following one's religion, one needs a freedom not only to choose it, but to live by it. To live by it. It's one thing to choose it, that I believe in this. But the next step is that I need to have the ability to live it. And that means that government, unless there are very serious reasons, are not to burden or hinder a person's practice of their religion. One of the things that I refer to often is a correspondence between a nun and Thomas Jefferson when he was president. It's shortly after the United States purchases the Louisiana area. And a nun in New Orleans writes to the president, sends her best wishes to him, and says to him in the letter, we have been here for a number of years. We educate young women. We take care of them. And we're wondering, are you going to let us continue to do this? And also, are you going to put any obstacles in our way? Because we're living out our religion. And Jefferson writes back. Of course, there were no computers and there were no typewriters even. So it's all in his script. Dear sister, I've received your letter and I have heard all the good work that you and your fellow sisters have done and continue to do. And be assured that what flows from your faith will never be hindered, as we value your contribution in our society. That's what religious freedom really means, and Jefferson got it right in 1804, that it's not just a theoretical concept. It's meant to be one of those practical truths that a government, a society lives by, respecting the dignity of each person. So a person comes from India, their background is Hindu. Someone comes from Burma, they very well could be Buddhists. What they're saying is that we need to respect everyone's religion. It doesn't say, as I said last week, and it bears repeating, it doesn't say anywhere in the document that one religion is as good as another. The church isn't speaking about that question at all. All they're saying is people have a right to follow their religion. Government or a society has no right to hinder that expression of being able to follow God, their higher power, whatever you call it. The society has an obligation to protect that right. Religious communities in the United States, even in the government and especially the judiciary, oftentimes, religious groups can have various controversies, conflicts, and they end up in a courtroom. Generally speaking, the United States recognizes that as far as possible, religious groups, when they have a controversy, if possible, they should work it out amongst themselves. And they distinguish three different kinds of groups. Those that are congregational, those that are presbyteral, and those that are hierarchical. A congregational mode, everyone's the same, and there's really no body of law like the UCC, the United Church of Christ. They really don't have a fully developed system whereby you can adjudicate something. So you will find often that American courts will intervene. They come to them and they say, will you, solve this? A labor dispute, or who owns what? A presbyteral has some organization, some ways of addressing things, but it's really not too developed. And the court will make a decision whether or not we should get involved in it or not. Do they have the wherewithal? Do they have the tools necessary to actually address the issue and come out with a decision, a resolution? Hierarchical churches, they say, they have what it takes to do the job. So I was involved in a land dispute. And this little 5 acres of land, and it was 5 acres of land, whether or not we were going to have a cemetery or we were going to have a housing for the poor. And it actually went to the Supreme Court of the United States twice. Honest to God, it went there twice, this 5 acres of land. And the second decision from the Supreme Court was, we have no jurisdiction. The Catholic Church is a hierarchical church, and the parishioners need to go to church court. A wonderful example of what that First Amendment really says, that the government will not interfere in religious life. And as far as as possible, the courts have tried to stay out of those things. A congregational system, you can't, because there's no way they can do it. They don't have it. But a presbyteral, is a little bit better. But the hierarchical, that went back, and literally, in the parish I was in, there was a trial. They moved the altar out, and there were 3 judges, and there were canon lawyers representing the 2 sides, and they heard witness testimony, and they came out with a decision. And so the matter was over. As far as the United States government, you handled it. You have the apparatus to do it. Do it. I only share that as an example of how the courts looked at this idea of religious freedom. As far as possible, we don't intervene. We let the religious group, and certainly the Catholic Church and the Orthodox churches, would have the most highly refined system of law. And therefore, we have the Code of Canon Law and other things. So I just share that as another example that in this Declaration of Religious Freedom, what the church is saying is the government should not get involved unless they absolutely have to. If there's another way of doing it, let it be done that other way. But it should not be in any way at all, coercion or fear. And those 2 things can paralyze a person's ability to live religious freedom. Coercion, you have a government that says, if you're not in this religion and you persist in being in that one, then realize you're not going to have all the advantages that these people have. Or the other extreme is that you may be invited to leave, which other, some countries have resorted to. This document, flowing from several sources, America, France, a few other countries, and then the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations, the Church gives it a theological, a spiritual underpinning about the dignity of man, and so importantly, the whole idea that it is so we can follow our truth. The truth that means the response to the ultimate questions in my life. Without religious freedom, a person does not have that opportunity. And so that is very, very important. In the document, near the very end, the Church does issue an apology for those times that the Church, over its history, didn't always respect religious freedom of people. So the Church, acknowledges that in this document, that while we have a clearer vision and understanding of what it is, we say with regret that we didn't always live up to it in practice. One of the real early examples in the modern time of any institution acknowledging that we haven't always done it right. Usually you try to, ignore it, make believe everything's fine, sort of cover it over. But remember, the Second Vatican Council, in another document, very, very strongly said the Church is always in need of reform. A very important point. That the Church is not perfect. I'm not scandalized by that. I don't know how you feel. I'm not scandalized because, as long as I'm in the Church, it's not going to be perfect. Because I'm just a human doing the best I can. Some days are better than others. So that the Church, if we really understand the Church, that the Church is human and divine, then the human part is always going to be less than complete. Now that doesn't mean we're not trying to get better, because Jesus has taught us often, you are to be perfect as your Heavenly Father is perfect. So we have a mandate to be as faithful as possible to our faith. I won't speak for anyone here. I'll just speak for myself. I don't always make it. I don't always hit the mark. So that the idea that the Church needs reformation, reform, is not, I don't feel at all, a scandalous thing. It's when you are not working at bettering it, that becomes a scandal. That you're not, that you think you're doing it all right. That's a kind of presumption, I think. That only God is always perfect. So anyway, I wanted to share those thoughts today. I think that fills out what this document was trying to say, not just to Catholics, but it was saying it to the world. That religious freedom is something that is fundamental. It is something that we are talking about for the good of all people. It's not just for us. For example, when you talk about our very first document, the one on divine revelation, when we started way back in January, that was addressed to the Catholic people. It was about how we believe in revelation that comes from Scripture and tradition, in the role of the magisterium. Those are all Catholic dynamics and concepts and realities. This decree I mean, this declaration is for everybody, because religious freedom is one of those very fundamental things that goes with the human dignity of every person. And so the church very forthrightly and with courage, and one may even say some boldness, comes out and says, look, this is the way we see this dynamic in life. And we stand by it, because every person was made in the image of God, and they have a right to seek their God, and they should have the freedom to live it in a public way and in conjunction with other people. So, for example, as Catholics here in the Diocese of Cleveland, we sponsor a wonderful Catholic charities. We are living our faith. We're expressing our religion. We're reaching out to whoever needs help. We have never asked for a baptismal record. Whoever's in need. Religious freedom to be able to minister to people, respond to them in their moment of crisis. Our schools, the number of non-Catholics who are now, especially in the inner city, using our schools. You know, one time I was at Cleveland Central Catholic. I asked, the young people that I was with, why does this school mean so much to you? The three answers I remember. The first one was, it's the only place where I'm respected as a person. Now, these are high school juniors. The second one was, no one is trying to make me a Catholic. The third one was, it's the only place that for 6 hours I don't have to worry about getting hurt or killed. That's the life, that's the world that these young people live in. They were being very honest with me. I was kind of proud of all three answers, except for the last one. But the other two, that young man felt respected by the people in the school. And the second one, when he said, no one's trying to make me a Catholic. No, we're not trying to get through the back door. No. We're in education. We're giving him an education. Now, he goes to, to religion classes. I mean, we're not going to let him sit and do nothing. But I mean, there's no effort to line him up for baptism. He goes to Mass when the priest comes to say Mass. He doesn't receive communion, but he goes. I mean, we're not leaving people behind in the classroom. But there's no efforts of proselytizing, of putting people under a situation where you're trying to nudge them forward. No, we're not into that. The good works of the church will speak for themselves.